So,
see, mine doesn't. Mine sound.
no, it's not. Or at least it doesn't look too interesting.
Okay, about 5 or 6 seconds.
Yeah, I assume those 5, 6, 7s are over. Hi to everybody, and welcome to our talk on some technology called data loss protection. My name is Enno.
My name is Angus.
Go Angus!
Oh, Angus, you're well known here. Okay, I'll directly dive into it. We have not tested how it works together presenting. Who are we? We are one old school networker and one previously plumb hacker. We leave it up to you to choose who is who. We have some shared interests in emerging technologies. Some of you might remember I gave a talk here last year on kit tracking technologies, and some of you might know me from Shmoo talking about layer 2 fuzzing. So we have some, interest and affinity to technologies and an approach how to understand how do technologies work, which security implications do they have, and obviously from kind of how to break them. The technology we are going to talk about today, which has the title DLP, is a very corporate technology. As such, NOTACON, there might be other places to talk about it which are better suited than NOTACON is. But in our talk, we do not want just to talk about the technology, but to raise some questions, primarily understand once there is some new tool in the on the desk, the new tool coming into some environment. Some of you might know there is every year there is something the smart salespeople try to tell you like, oh, use this and you'll be safe. 10 years ago this has been VPNs, and 5 years ago this has been IDS, IPS, and 2 years ago this has been NAC, Network Access Control, and nowadays it's DLP. So it might be interesting to understand once the technology comes in, what are the implications. And that technology we are going to talk about, the main purpose it's intended for is to protect data. And this is one of the things, I mean, that's a very, obvious intent. Everybody of us, I assume, has to protect data at some points. So it seems, oh, there's a new technology which can help us here. And we want to raise the question, or to make you think about a bit within this talk, if you have to protect data, what can be done to protect data? The agenda is very simple. We'll state what kind of problem, DLP or whatever that is. So obviously we'll explain what it is. We'll discuss what's the problem this stuff tries to solve. We'll give an overview how the problem should be addressed and how it works. We'll give a kind of overall assessment. Do we think this is a good technology? Do we think, do we like it? What new problems might it bring? Does it solve what it tries to solve, this stuff? And at the end of the talk, we'll go back to the initial problem statement and discuss that obvious problem of data protection or data leakage. Once you do not want to solve it with some new tool on the desk, new kit in the town, but want to solve it with, say, traditional means, what we call, that's a term Brian brought up, which I very much like, that is latent capabilities. Use the stuff you already have to protect your data from leakage. That's what the L in DLP stands for. We'll discuss this one, and that might be, for those of you who are not in the position of being in large corporations with the latest tools, this one might be a very interesting part then to understand what can I do to protect data. The problem statement is, I mean, to lose control over one's own data is, say, the primal fear of the information age. All of us, I assume, do not want to have their personal assets in some way exposed, and the same obviously applies to organizations. Every of those entities, be individuals, be organizations, want to prevent some data, whatever this is, getting out of their control. There's maybe, for organizations, those might be trade secrets, marketing plans, stuff that's regulated. Remember the talk that just happened here. There's data protection. Once you violate it, you might be fined. So you are responsible for protecting some data, in that case customer data. This goes hand in hand with the strive for compliance, say PCI compliance, say data protection compliance, say GLBA, stuff like this. Organizations are responsible to prevent to lose control over some data, and the same applies to individuals. Again, there might be stuff on your computers that you do not want to see publicly exposed, be it your tax declaration, be it private pictures of your private. Some of you might notice. Who knows the name Max Mosley? That's the kind of boss of the Formula One. He's running the Formula One. He's running the main organization. He's a very powerful man, very rich and powerful, very respected, at least till last weekend. On Monday, I think, there came out a video which shows Max Mosley with 5 prostitutes playing some, say, Nazi game, wearing uniforms and doing strange stuff. I'm not in a position to judge what he does in his private life. There was a large outcry in the UK. All the Jewish organizations immediately asked him to get back from his post of the primary the man in the Formula One. And there's, from a personal point of view, I think one can find it very strange what happens in this video. On the other hand, I am an advocate of privacy. I think it's whatever he does, as long as he does it in his own space and doesn't violate laws, he can do whatever he wants. But I'm sure he would have been happy if he had some protection mechanism to prevent this data from leaking. A 5-hour video with all kinds of strange stuff in it.
To self-download.
Yeah, I don't think it's on YouTube, but there have been. It was given to one of the large, how do you say, for those newspapers like
Tabloids.
Tabloids, to one of the largest tabloids of the UK, and they obviously have the full 5-hour copy. And again, there was lots of strange stuff in that video. So again, different kinds of entities have a differently motivated intent of protecting their data against loss or against something that is within that terminology of products that is called leakage. And with leakage is meant data getting out of the control, which can happen by different ways. This is one pretty prominent example. In 5th February, this one came up on the Times. Lilly Ellie, they had some, you know the case better than I do.
Yeah, there was some suggestion that they had used less than appropriate marketing techniques in one of the new drugs for treating schizophrenia. And the lawyers were working it out, their lawyers and the government lawyers, and all of a sudden this information was, this communication between the lawyers was sent to the wrong email address, and it became public knowledge. And they anticipate there was a lot of damage done because obviously the information would come out at some point once they had settled, but it would be done in a manner that had been negotiated with the right PR people at the right time. So it was very damaging. In fact, in the story, originally Eli Lilly had accused the government of leaking the information.
That's the fun part.
Yeah, when in fact that's not what happened at all. It was one of the lawyers had
sent
used
to
all
the
the
wrong
completion.
mail address. A full memo containing all the stuff, and this title indicates they estimated the damage of this misdirected mail to up to 1 billion. So this is exactly what those technologies called DLP, which we will elaborate on in some seconds, want to protect against. So from an organizational point of view, they do not want this to happen. They don't want to be named here, given that just was a privacy talk. Some of you might know this website, privacyrights.org, where they have to report, they don't have to report here, but it comes up here. This is the most known website reporting data breaches. And most organizations do not, I think nearly all, do not want to be here. So they want to prevent the data from getting out, from getting leaked. And this leakage can happen either accidentally. The most common case is mails that get sent to a wrong recipient, which happens all the time. It might be you reply wrongly to several recipients. Might be due to auto-completion features. It might be even due to your company name. This is the company I'm running, ERNW, and even for Germans, pronouncing ERNW is a bit, a little bit difficult. Most people tend to say ENRW, not ERNW, which means misspelling in the mail address. There is another organization called ENRW, and they have a catch-all mail address. So once we do a typo within an internal mail, it might end up there. And this happens in the past. And that's why we put in our transport table, we are running postfix, we put an entry like this one. Mails to ER and W are not delivered. You get an error for this, which indicates the cause. Mails that are sent to a wrong email address are the most common cause of leakage. Then there is stuff that's printed to the wrong printer. This one I think probably we can rate as the second most popular stuff. Sensitive data copied over to some removable storage, say in USB stick, and that one gets lost. Happens all the time again. Not so well known might be data can leak via file sharing tools. There has been an interesting study from some researchers from Dartmouth College in 2007. They monitored P2P communications. They monitored the search terms, and they monitored the kind of documents that were exchanged. They used the technology, by the way, that's called Tywarsa. Some of you might not know this kind of technology exists. This might give an idea what this technology is intended for, to monitor P2P communications, just to notify you this stuff is out there. But those researchers used it, and they try to identify searches and documents from, I think, the 30 major US banks. all account-related documents and stuff. And they found lots of documents shared, probably accidentally. But the more interesting part is they found a lot of searches for those kinds of documents. So there are some people participating in the P2P community explicitly searching for leaked banking documents. And in one case, you see this. For one make, we found a spreadsheet with 23,000 business accounts, including contact names, account numbers, company positions and stuff. And so this is another scenario where data can leak accidentally. And this is exactly what those tools want to protect against. There are other types of leakage. Maybe the first one we call deliberately and in full awareness, like C-level people trying to close a deal. They need to, I'll push it, doing some contractions, we have to exchange documents. Some tool pops up like, you're not allowed to put this document on a USB stick. What will they do? They will call you the help desk. Hey, you have to get me relieved from this restriction. I have to close the deal. Even if they know they violate the policy, they regard business more important than the policy. And there might even be malicious cases, people who try to bring out, again, I'm from Europe, and in Europe there was, some of you might have noticed that big Liechtenstein tax scandal, where an employee from a bank in Liechtenstein, which is a tax, how do you say? Tax
haven.
Tax haven. Copied over customer data and sold that on a CD, and he sold that CD for 5 million euros to the German intelligence. And they sued a lot of prominent people in Germany. And they have, I think, so far they have gained 400 millions in tax, which they get back, so it was a good investment. This is a malicious case. We will not... In our talk, we will not cover the malicious case as the DLP tools. They do not claim to protect against malicious use. They claim to protect against the accidental case.
And that's very significant when we look at this. If you think the reason that you're putting controls in place to do this kind of stuff is to get the malicious people or the bad guys or the authorized users with malicious intent, the vendors themselves don't even make those claims.
Oh, by the way, the major vendors, we have no slide where we name the vendors, but to give you an idea, if you ever heard of such products, most antivirus endpoint vendors have something. McAfee is a prominent example. There are some dedicated companies like One2, which have been acquired by Symantec. There is Vadasys. In the meantime, Trend Micro has such stuff.
I call them the V companies, Vontu, Vericept. I mean, the list goes on. And if it's of interest, I'm sure we'll be around the rest of the weekend. We can talk in specifics. And we'd love to hear your experiences, too, if you have any.
But this is the most hyped technology at the very moment. Every sales guy from one of those companies showing up in large organizations is there like, use this and you will get rid of all your compliance and data leakage problems. Just to make clear, thinking about it, the leakage itself might not be the core problem, as many leakage cases happen on a daily basis without any notice. In fact, in some cases, that organizations from where the data got leaked even argue in that way. In the UK last year, I'm not sure if this is the same case that we are referring to, that the guy before us referred to. That's what I stated. This is the official statement. 2 password-protected disks. Note this, 2 password-protected disks. Why do they say password-protected disks? To give the people a safe feeling, but think about it once more. If they were encrypted, they'd say encrypted, but they say password-protected, whatever that means. I think that the greater public might have understood encrypted, so there's a reason why they chose password protected. But those disks containing details of all child benefit recipients in the UK, 25 million individuals, those disks got lost. They had no records. They should have been sent from one place to another one, and they never arrived. But they didn't know, they had no record. When did it leave? Where did it leave? Nothing. And after the fact, in that official statement, it was said, the police tell me that they have no reason to believe that this data has found its way into the wrong hand. I mean, you see me smiling. This is completely bullshit. How do they? I mean, how do they know? And if they knew, would they ever say it? How can you trust the same people losing that data without any record, saying, "Oh no, they did not go into the wrong hands"? Oh crap! But they argue in exact that way. Listen, we lost it, but there's no problem. The problem would only occur if it got into the wrong hands, if there was unauthorized access. And we tell you that unauthorized access did not happen. So this brings us down that the real problem of leakage might be the unauthorized access. We'll get back to this. We just want to make clear at this point, leakage itself may or may not happen. The real problem from a personal or organizational perspective is there might be unauthorized access to some sensitive data. So how does this stuff work? There is a pretty good white paper we reference here from an ex-Gartner guy doing lots of, he has a lot of publicity in the space of DLP. But this is a good definition. Products that, based on central policies, identify, monitor, and protect data at rest, in motion, and in use through deep content analysis. So some tools which look at data, be on file servers, that is data at rest, be it transferred via networks, in motion, or in use, people who do something with the data, and those tools try to monitor and understand, oh, this is sensitive data, it shouldn't leave this network, or it should be copied over to a USB stick, stuff like this. DLP is mostly a summary term, which might mean data loss prevention or protection. There is data leakage prevention, protection. Other terms include exclusion prevention.
My personal favorite.
Yeah, but I mean there is some confusion about exclusion prevention, as there is the book of
it just sounds dirty.
Richard Baitlish, and he describes other stuff than this one. Again, we named some vendor names. How do these tools usually work? This might be they might be placed at some place in the network, passively monitoring the network data flow. They might be integrated into proxies. They might be integrated into the email workflow, like sitting on integrated in an MTA or sitting on an extra hop. All these are the, say, network-based variants, and usually the data in use, this piece is tried to be addressed with some host-based agent. So install some agent on all your, say, Windows desktops, and that agent looks, this file containing credit card numbers should not be copied over to a USB stick. If that happens, I'll pop up and I'll block the action. So there's the network-based approach and the host-based approach with an agent, and there are some products which combine both approaches. The key requirements for such an agent to work, to do what it promises to work, to do is it has to monitor the network stack, monitor the file system, monitor the kernel, or at least the I/O operations, some data to a USB stick. And this
and it's got to coexist with all the other agents on your endpoints.
Yeah. and this we'll get back to possible. We'll refer to possible attack vectors later within the talk. But some of you might already have a bad feeling hearing, oh, there is something sitting on the endpoints which has access to the network stack and the kernel and the file system. It's a new product, and this stuff should make me more safe. How can it? It might be induce the opposite. Yes, finding ODAs in such agents might be very, very interesting, as those agents identify the keys for kingdom. They identify the sensitive data. Ideally, they do this. There are different methods how to do this. This might just be some rule-based, like a credit card number is looking like this, and look for all data looking like this pattern. This might be a file matching, like in file names or parts of the file, say contracts. All contracts begin with a similar first page. Look for all documents that has this similar first page, indexed in some way. There might be some statistical analysis or hashing of documents. All this, the different techniques. If you're interested in those techniques, again, we refer to that white paper. This is how an example product might look like. There is an agent running on the endpoints, which has an engine for intercepting data, get a hand on data, try to detect possible incidents with that data, report those incidents, and maybe storage of forensic data for later forensics on the incident. This is the agent side, and this is usually the management administration console where you define the policies, and there's a report database and the forensic store. This is just to illustrate how these products generally look like from an architectural point of view. So obviously these products have different approaches to address a problem which we have already identified as an important problem, and a problem everybody might face in some way. So what is our problem then with these products or technologies? Why do we have a talk here about this stuff? The overall assessment from us. We have some practical hands-on. We have done some theoretical analysis. We are at the moment building a lab, as we think there is lots of ODAs to be found in that stuff. But the overall assessment from our perspective is those tools do not work as advertised in most environments, as some requirements are not met. They might not solve the real issues, and they might even induce new attack vectors. What about, think of, say, some Asian republic and their state-driven hackers finding an ODA in such a product, enabling compromise of all endpoints and identification of all sensitive data. The damage might be far greater than what might have happened without such a tool. We'll go through this three steps. They won't work, they might not solve the real issues, and they might induce new attack vectors. First thing, why won't they work?
Well, I mean, yeah, we're going to go through each of the details for the organizational requirements not being met, but I think we'll go back one slide there, Anna, please. From a basic, high level, complexity kills. So you heard me rail, it's another agent. For having a holistic solution, if you want to make sure you're stopping all the leaks, you're plugging all the holes, it's not enough just to have the network-based. It's not enough to have the endpoint. Do you have unstructured data? Where are your data assets? Are they located just on a couple servers, or are they everywhere? So where do you start? That's one of the big challenges. And then as far as only some leak vectors. So each technology has a very specific focus, network-based or agent-based. How do you deploy them? And then again, the fact that if users are turning them off or if they rebel against you, they will definitely kill any effectiveness that you have with this technology. So, so we'll just go through some of our high-level stuff. To be successful, you're still going to have a documented and effective data classification scheme. How are you going to know if this is an asset that shouldn't be leaving your environment? If you have an actual hit on something that's important, or if it's just test data. Because we are teaching our developers to use test data, right? They're not supposed to use live data, so it's very possible that you might misclassify something. If you have a documented and mature incident response procedure, it's not going to do you any good to create tons of work for people that they can't respond to. It just creates a paper trail, which is probably not good for your organization. You better budget for FTEs. This is a very corporate term, but it's people, full-time employees, taking care of all that work that you just generated. So it's a whole new industry. This might be a place to look for a new career. You'll need them. And actually investing in those people might not be a bad thing. So this could be, bringing this technology in might actually beef up your security department. Certainly there's some potential for job preservation there. If you're not prohibiting the use of webmail, well, there's one nice avenue for stuff going out the door. And if you are, I'm sure you'll see lots of false positives in those streams, where there's some maybe personal communication that's communicating assets that get hit that are not a part of the organization's assets, but those people's assets, so they can communicate that.
And webmail happens all the time as well. In one environment where we evaluated the technology, developers are sending. There was some with that. We had some products, and one of those products has a flag like "Look for source code leaving the environment." And we got a lot of hits, and it turned out there were some contracting developers who send out the source code to their Gmail accounts every night. Like, oh, this is my work, and I send it to my Gmail account to kind of back up or to work on it further when I'm at home or whatever. Obviously, this was against the policies in that place, but those contracting developers didn't even know.
We call them stupid human tricks. Nothing malicious there. Somebody's trying to do their job. They are innovative. We value innovation, right? So they're finding a way to get their job done under budget and on time. And then, of course, if you don't have accountability, or what I term a culture of accountability, where you correct this behavior and get people working for you instead of against you, when they violate these type of policies, game over. I mean, so these are all criteria that you really are going to have to consider, even if on top of buying any kind of technology.
And now, those of you who are from some corporate information security space, ask yourselves, how many of those do you have? We do not know many organizations which could make their crosses here. And what we saw in the live environment when looking at these technologies, we saw a lot of travel planning stuff, like someone in a department was responsible for travel planning of the people of that department and made hotel bookings and stuff, and there were all the time there were credit card numbers included, and all these actions brought up incidents and
positive hits on the tools.
Yeah, that had to be taken care of. I mean, one could fine-tune the filters, but then again, it's effort to fine-tune. What we noticed more was customers sending in that environment, which is quite a large one, 10,000 people getting their network traffic through the point we had to look at. Customers send credit card data in all the time.
A lot of time, the people will open up a support call, and they'll send in their username and password and say, this isn't working right, or, yeah, here's my social security number. And the interesting question there is that's data ingestion, right? You now have this asset. Are you liable for it? Are you now the custodian of that data? And if that data were actually sent in via email and it bounced back up because that person is no longer with the organization and it's got all your corp's header information. So I think there'll be some interesting case law in the future along that space.
Yeah, and one could even argue: is it your responsibility to protect somebody sending you his or her private data? But once you have such tools in effect, this might pop up.
And maybe you take a proactive approach and you start to educate your users or your potential customers.
Oh, you shouldn't send us this data. But your sales department most probably won't like, we can't educate our customers. If we try to dictate them which kind of mails to send us, they might choose another window or whatever. One big piece of problems is webmail. Webmail should be in most organizations. So we know webmail is allowed to a certain degree, maybe only during breaks, but whatever. I mean, webmail should be encrypted. But if it is encrypted, then the DLP is blind. If it's unencrypted, which happens depending on the type of webmail you use, and with Gmail, for example, it depends on the way you get into Gmail. Some of you might know that depending on the way how you invoke Gmail, it is unencrypted by default.
Probably the only way that we'd had the example about the source code going outside of the organization.
Yeah. Then a lot of false positives pop up, as there are people using their private webmail accounts to do whatever they buy something and send their credit card data. I mean, it's not the organizational problem. Again, to cure this, if one took the stance like, hey, listen, valued employees, so we noticed that some of you are sending their credit card data together with SSNs, whatever, out by their webmail accounts. You shouldn't do so. They might feel spied on. I mean, in Europe, where I come from, this would be highly illegal.
Well, we're getting used to it, so it doesn't bother us anymore in the States. This class in the upper part, and some of the ways we're dealing with this, I term this broken business processes. The Gmail source code, there's probably a facility in that organization to actually safeguard that and communicate it in an effective way. But because of typical email file size blocking, they'd have to go to something like a Gmail. So the broken business process is people don't realize there's another mechanism. They haven't been instructed or educated around that. Similarly, people might not have understand how to educate the client, the customer, or that even their Gmail is not secure. It's not encrypted by default.
And all this made up at least 90% of all the incidents that popped up.
So how are you going to find any
all
malicious
these are no
stuff?
incidents. Whereas looking from the corporate perspective or the data owner perspective, all this might not be problematic. Some people argue that those DLP tools can help you understand what goes wrong or help you understand where your data go. Not so much protected, but you have no idea what's going on with your data. Find out by deploying DLP. We think this is a bit, we didn't coin the term, it's the PEMPA approach. There was a very good blog entry we have in the reference slide from a guy called Angus Kidman. Who says, unfortunately, every time I hear the word leakage, I get a vision of nappies. And he elaborates on that, I mean, kids using nappies have not yet been educated, trained to go to the toilet, toilet trained. And as long as they have not been toilet trained, you put nappies. You can put on the nappies all their life, or you can toilet train them.
He's an Aussie,
So
so
the
diapers.
So the approach of toilet training might be the better one than using some nappy kind of tool. And for us, that approach, like, oh, you can find out what to protect with the help of the tool, is a bit like, oh, wasn't the tool supposed to protect me? What does it protect? You find out with the help of the tool. You get a logic. There is a strange logic, or no logic within that. It's like buying a firewall, and when it comes to configuring the rules, I have no idea about the rules. I thought this stuff would tell me what rules I have to use. And this is how it works a bit in the DLP space. So, first part of the overall assessment was, from our experience and what we think the stuff does not work and does not do what people expect it to do. The second piece of the overall assessment is there might be additional attack vectors, and quite a few of those. I took many of the ideas of this part from last year's Black Hat presentation, so kudos to those guys. The Black Hat presentation wasn't given. It was cancelled, obviously for legal reasons, but they have published at least, most guys from Matasano published the paper. And they went over what can go wrong with DLP. There is an agent that has to run with high privileges. If not, it couldn't interfere with the network communication, couldn't interfere with the I/O and stuff. As the vendors are pushing that stuff into the market, they found out most of the, there are lots of common libraries used in those agents, like think OpenSSL. What happens if the agent is compromised? So there's another piece of software which hasn't gone through a quality, very high or deep quality assurance, running on all your workstations and try to protect your data. Another attack vector might be within that agent, the engine, the parser. That stuff has to look at all files, so it has to be able to parse files. And those of you who have ever been in fuzzing know that, oh, parsing, that sounds good. There must be a parser. What if we inject data that the parser crashes? And we think one of the reasons we built the lab at the moment is we think there's lots of bad stuff to be found in this space. What about the management stuff? Once you get control over the management, you have control over you might have control over all the stuff. Management in the solutions we had a look at was web-based administration consoles. We have to define who has access to the management. Is it InfoSec? They might not understand what's going on. Is it user help desk to solve initial problems? Is it HR? Whoever it is, and compromise this stuff might mean you have the keys to the kingdom. So, aside from the fact that bringing a new technology in adds complexity, and adding complexity is always bad security-wise. Aside from this very general stance, this technology, due to its own complexity and architecture, might induce lots of new attack vectors.
And if you could also see the communications between the management and the agents actually hitting on some of the filters, so it could be a nice, interesting looping situation there. And
so it's not only not doing what it was intended to do, but might cause new problems, might decrease or increase the overall risk situation or decrease the overall security situation. So let's think about back to the problem. What can be done instead? If we advocate, to solve the problem of leakage, it might not be a good idea to use this stuff of tools. That's a negative point of view. It's a legitimate question to answer then, okay, what else should we do? And in the next slides, we want to describe very general, very high-level concept what could be done with the existing methodologies and tools. To understand what happens or what problems DLP tries to address, we have defined some entities. One entity we call a trusted network, your network, and the rest are untrusted networks. And within your trusted network, you might have systems that have external interfaces, that don't have communication capabilities to the outside world. Say, those file servers.
File servers.
Usually, you do not run mail clients on your file servers. Ideally, you do not, and you don't put in your USB stick every day in your file server. So these systems, from their data cannot leak by the classic leak methods, mail or browsing or putting to external storage. And there are systems that have external interfaces. The endpoints, desktops, where mail clients are running, where you have USB ports, where your users sit, which might use webmail, might use Skype and stuff, so untrusted stuff on the workstations. And I mean, it's users, so they can make mistakes. That's human. So looking at the way data takes, within that very simple concept of trusted and untrusted and with external interfaces and without, there is migration of data from a system, from a file server to an endpoint, might be, and there might be the leakage process, data leaving the trusted space going to untrusted space. Now, strictly speaking, the latter one, this one is only a problem if the point where the data arrives is malicious or compromised in advance, and if the data is unencrypted. And looking at this immediately kind of brings up possible ways to address the problem. Think of this. Well, that's what happens. Data comes from file server to endpoint, leaks from there on, and the question could be, why is this one needed? Why does the data have to leave the systems without external interfaces and go to the endpoints? One could ask, why have sensitive data on the endpoint at all? And we are advocates of stuff like server-based computing, data not being processed on endpoints. I mean, we are realists. We know. Just based on this talk, you will not starting your designing your architectures on next Monday. But think about it. The data has to be here before it can leak out. Prevent the first step or reduce the first step might be the first step in addressing the overall problem. And okay, now let's assume the data is on the endpoint. And the data leaks, so it gets out. One might pose the question, this entity here can only use the data if it's unencrypted. So simply said, use encryption on those points where data can leak. I mean, this is very, very basic stuff. We put it in here to make you think about the problem of leakage and the parts of the problem of leakage. And encrypted data, it's easy to encrypt data on USB sticks or to have a centralized mail encryption gateway. Even though this might, this is technology which has to be brought in and to be sponsored and stuff, it might be much better to invest on this stuff than on investing on a new complex in itself, immature technology like DLP.
And just another on the current regulations, if it's encrypted, you don't have to disclose, which is one of the biggest business concerns.
Especially in the context of the talk before. You might remember there's those federal state legislation that mandates disclosure of lost data. Once it is encrypted, you do not have, from an organizational point of view. So we mean it's just about information flow. Understand where the data is processed and how it flows. And once you've understood this, all the instrumentarium that's already there, like access control, like login monitoring and encryption, all this used properly might already solve the problem without being forced to bring in a complete new class of products, which are, by the way, are pretty pricey. It's 5 or 6 number figures usually to deploy such stuff. And still the organizations think, most organizations love this stuff in the current discussion. They are all excited, oh, those problems, we wanted to get rid of this.
It's being peddled as compliance snake oil, basically, and, buy the silver bullet and all this stuff goes away. But, I think you see the trend in this where we're at is that it doesn't. The basics have to be there, and if you're not doing the basics, only thing the new technologies do is create complexity, which kills security.
So understand the way your information flows. DLP might help there. Once you bring in DLP to get an understanding of your information flow, one might argue, okay, it's a bit pricey way to learn this, but okay, at least as you learn it, you understand it afterwards. But once you understand this, and once you take care of typical, we have named 2 pieces that are often overlooked, even on endpoints. Say a Windows-based laptop, which has working with EFS. Once people get attachments with their and those attachments are stored in temporary folders of the mail clients. Say in some environments, Outlook. Even with my, I'm mailing like this with MUT and VI on FreeBSD. This is my mail stuff. Even there, once usually I SSH into my box and do my mail. Once the connection gets broken and I do not use the screen, there might be a temporary file of MUT which contains the last mail I edited, and this is in temp. I mean, the permissions are set to only the owner, but it's still data that's in temp and /tmp, and /tmp might not be encrypted in contrast to my home dir. So temporary file locations are an often overlooked point. The mode of information sharing. People are abusing, say, MS Exchange as a file platform. Once you understand this, it's easy to use the tools you already have to address the problem. Okay, I mean, there's 2 examples. One of the most prominent reasons for misdirected emails is autocompletion in some mail clients. This is just to give very basic examples what could be done once you understand this stuff. Understand what happens on a very basic level and put the right controls in the right places. You don't have to buy a new tool. So overall summary, I mean, data leakage is a real problem. And this real problem tries to be addressed by a new class of tools, gaining quite some publicity since, I'd say, 6 to 12 months. And in lots of fields, the stuff is discussed. We think those tools are immature. They do not address the real problems and in the right way. And once you want to really address leakage, understand the information flow, and you will be able to do so with the current tool space. That's the message we want to send out with the talk. Are there any questions?
In the back? In the back?
Most workstations at this point, they would have a CD or DVD burner, or, you said provide encrypted USB thumb drives, but there's still really very little proof against somebody bringing his own CD or his own thumb.
true, but that again is might depend. The DLP stuff primarily tries to address accidental leakage.
Not a malicious
if your
user.
people, if it's a common practice in your environment that people burn their CDs, you should think about, okay, what can I do there? But from our experience, the main stuff is USB sticks, which get lost. This is the primary mail and lost USB sticks.
And if you have a policy against doing those, I mean, your iPods, that whole class, if you're not, that goes back to the earlier slide, that if you're not enforcing those policies, which make good sense, then game over. I mean, no silver bullet's going to help you.
Notice? I stole that from you, Tim.
I know you did. Any more questions?
That's not a question, but it's more like a statement.
Okay.
It seems like that a lot of these tools are being built to protect the upper management of companies.
From liability or going to jail or
Yeah, it seems like they're not really embracing the using of a lot of these security tools because they seem to be, it's more difficult for them to do what they want to do. So they'll call, complain.
The irony of it is the people who are bringing it in and championing it would be the first ones to call the help desk and say, turn this crap off because I can't do my job.
And then there's a breach, and then they're...
This is absolutely why we think that this is a failed strategy.
Oh, we have a
cost
DLP
people a lot of money.
solution.
Yes.
How could this happen?
Yeah, we don't have to worry about it.
So is the main way of preventing all this happening is having an accountability culture and within a company?
Understanding where the information goes. And
Understanding the value of the data.
yeah, I mean, it's data is here. It has to get here. In most environments, it has to get here. The first piece of control, access control here. And then it has to leak unencrypted. So there are so many pieces within here where you can...
So don't data type it, just encrypt everything. And then you have one way of dealing with all the data. Or figure out what your data typing is and don't have 15 different levels. Have 3 different levels and make people accountable for it. And every time they create an asset or check out an asset, make sure that they're signing up for that. Now, that's what a lot of the solutions do. Pop up. You are about ready to email a piece of data that's possibly sensitive. Are you sure you want to do this? Click yes. Are you really sure?
I want to get my work done.
Now, this creates user fatigue, which then ends up with the same system as you start tuning down. So it's a vicious circle. And I think time will prove that this is, this year's NAC, which is, last year's PKI. And in reality, it sounds good. The goals are good. But in practice, we don't think it's going to be as effective as some of the things we've described, which is just good old
And it
basic.
might even bring up new attack vectors.
Absolutely.
Somebody's going to make some money from ZDI, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe, or maybe they won't sell it to ZDI. Maybe they'll use it in another way. Question?
So in the news, you have some pretty high-profile leaks. They end up in the newspaper, and that's really the impetus to not do this is you don't want your company to appear in the newspaper.
Yep, they'll follow the sheeple. Yep.
Right. And then the response is always we lost 1 billion credit card numbers. Let's give all those people a year of free credit monitoring and move on with our lives. How do you think that kind of attitude, that sort of blasé attitude towards these high-profile leaks?
The slaps on the wrists. I mean, there's been compelling events, but look, have you stopped using any of those vendors? I mean, TJ's Maxx is actually, they dipped for a while, but then the business is still going.
Yeah, but I have to bring in the FTC for 20 years or something, don't they?
That's that maybe in a business analysis, maybe that's not as bad as doing what might be a very burdensome, hard. Why don't people do security well? It's because it's difficult to do it well. It's hard to have that kind of discipline. So I think until it really becomes a cost-benefit value analysis, we'll continue to see lots of vendors make lots of money on snake oil.
Okay, we are both conference organizers ourselves. We know how important it is to stay on time. It's 3 o'clock. Our talk's finished here. Thanks for your attention. If you have any more questions, feel free. We are here the whole weekend and enjoy NOTACON.
Hey, you guys, Batman and Robin,
Okay.
You were just the sidekick.
Yeah.
Translator.
Yeah.
Little Batman.
Rusted metal, that's a good one. Who gets, they can use the handle.
Yeah, okay.
Let's,
What's up next? I got one.
you're gonna do the wireless, the hand, you don't want the handheld, do you? You want this mic instead of,
Whatever.
I think this is the one, I don't know where they're at, they'll hook you up. But unless you want to do the handheld, you're gonna be typing, you know.
So you give the your tax?
I'm the one replacing it.
Okay. But you give his talk then?
Not really. I give mine.
It's on the
But-
same subject?
Not.
Okay, well, what it's about?
It's about audio in 4K intros.
Okay,
Yeah, that's well.
I'll say here. Yeah, from what we got, you go over. I think.
Yeah, which, where am I at?
So,
No, you stay here too. You're staying here.
I just want to see if Jerry's a guy or a girl. I just want to peek in there to see if Jerry's a guy or a girl. And I'm not sure.
So the battery will last.
battery will last. Yeah.
At least 2 hours. But change the mode so it doesn't go to sleep on you.
Okay.
So if we go to battery scheme, okay, you've got 2.5 hours, so.
Okay.
Oh, hang on. Adjust power properties. Okay, so turn off monitor after 2 hours. Turn off hard disks after 30 minutes. Never.